Alright, so I've chosen the first prompt, and I kind of wanted to just dive a little deeper into the life of Hagar. Um, out of the out of all the women in the stories, I kind of felt the most compassion on her. Um, Not that the other women weren't also struggling or going through hard things, but just her specific story kind of, I don't know, it just kind of touched me more than the other ones. What she had to go through and how painful it must have been. Um, so I wanted to just start in uh, chapter 16 of Genesis, where we see Hagar's running away from Sarah. We see in verse 8, 7 and 8, she is confronted by an angel, which is actually God, and he asks her where she's going, and which he already knows, obviously, but he asks her where she's going and commands her to go back and submit to her mistress, um, which, if she's already running away because you know, she doesn't feel loved and she is hated almost by Sarah, um, that's got to be really hard. Take a lot of faith to listen to the Lord on that one, and go back to where you just came from, where all that hurt and hardship came from. Um, and so it just kind of speaks to the faith that Hagar exhibits, her faith in God. And you see later on in the chapter, she names the child, or she names the well. I can't even pronounce that, but it basically says that you are the God who sees me. So you can tell that she, for all of her life up to this point, is just kind of property as a servant. She's just the property of her masters. So she obviously is oftentimes probably looked over, ignored, kind of swept under the rug. you know just she's lived a really hard life of probably not being seen and loved, the way that God does. God sees her and God loves her, and it also kind of just, I noticed that, she says, "You are the God who sees me." She names the well that because she recognizes that it's not just an angel; it's the Lord who is confronting her and talking to her. So I didn't want to pick one of the two, so I wanted to also, because it does connect, I wanted to also touch on chapter 21, where Hagar and now her son Ishmael are actually sent away. So here we pick up back in the story, 5 chapters later, she's running away again. And so this time the Lord sees her again, with her and her kid, and he provides for her in the desert, in her wandering and abandonment, honestly, because she didn't have anywhere to run to, anybody to run to. Everything she knew and the people who she knew, they had abandoned her. They had told her, shipped her away. They didn't want anything to do with her. And so we kind of see Hagar as the outcast. She doesn't experience that love and affection that is given to her ultimately by God in the story, because God sees her in the midst of her struggle, and provides for her and shows her, hey, maybe Sarah didn't want you, Abraham forgot about you, but I've been with you the whole time. I didn't forget about you, and so I think that speaks a lot to also the character of God, which is kind of what I draw from the story, because obviously I won't ever go through any of the things that she went through in her life, but everybody goes through feeling abandoned by others, struggling at our lowest of low. And regardless of what we're going through, what we learn from the story is that God always sees us. He will never forget about us, and he takes the time to take care of his children, and he blesses us, and he gives us promises. We see in the story that he promises Hagar, that her descendants would be more than she could count. And because of her faith, she is rewarded for that. And, you know, the Ishmaelites, the whole entire nation came from her son. So yeah, that's kind of just what I took from the story of Hagar.